Welcome to the deep dive. You've sent us your burning questions and stacks of information, and our job is really to extract that crucial knowledge, but, without the overwhelm. Think of us as your guides to getting smart, fast.
Exactly. And for our learner today, we're tackling a really fascinating area, lean methodology. We're drawing from this document, GPT-3-H.pdf, and it dives right into lean and, well, a whole collection of related techniques designed to boost efficiency.
Okay, let's unpack this then. Our goal really is to understand how these techniques, you've got lean itself, just in time, or JIT, Kaizen, 5S, total productive maintenance, TPM, and even a quick mention of Six Sigma, how they all sort of fit together. The big idea seems to be figuring out how businesses can deliver maximum customer value while at the same time really clamping down on waste. Sounds like a smart way to work, right?
Absolutely. It really is. And it all starts with lean methodology. At its core, lean is a, let's say, structured way of thinking about management. It wasn't just invented overnight. It actually evolved from a very highly respected Toyota production system.
Toyota, yeah. They've certainly set a high bar for efficient operations. So what's the fundamental concept behind lean? What's the core idea?
Well, the central idea is pretty straightforward. Maximize the value a product offers to the customer. And crucially, this is done by consistently reducing waste within the manufacturing process, all while, maintaining productivity. It's really about strategically optimizing your workflow and being adaptable as you minimize that waste.
Okay, so it's not just about cutting costs randomly. It's more about being smart or more intelligent about how you actually generate value. That makes sense. And who leads this? Who applies this lean thinking?
That's where the role of the lean manager comes into play. Their main job, their primary responsibility, is to pinpoint those activities within the entire value chain that truly deliver the most value from the customer's point of view.
Right.
Then, following that, they focus intensely on eliminating everything else, all those activities that don't add value, which in lean terminology, we simply call waste.
Waste. Okay, waste in what sense? Are we just talking about like leftover bits of material?
It's actually much broader than just physical leftovers. And to really grasp that, a lean manager often needs to use a kind of reverse thinking. It's almost like a reverse engineering approach,
How so?
They start with what the customer ultimately values, what they're willing to pay for, and then they trace backwards through all the processes involved in delivering that value.
Interesting. Okay. So what are the guiding principles? What underpins this whole lean approach?
There are several core principles that guide lean thinking. One is aiming to get things right the first time, really striving for perfect quality right from the start. Then, of course, there's the absolutely critical principle of minimizing waste in all its different forms. Continuous improvement is also fundamental, always seeking ways to refine and enhance processes. And finally, flexibility, that ability to adapt to changing demands and circumstances.
Okay, those sound like very sensible principles. Let's dig a bit deeper into this idea of waste. What specific types of waste does lean really try to eliminate?
Well, lean methodology specifically targets waste in several key areas. Things like wasted labor, overproduction, inefficient use of physical space, product defects, holding excess inventory, and any unnecessary transportation of goods.
Right, so basically anything that doesn't directly contribute value and just ends up consuming time and resources.
Precisely. And to really understand the scope of this, we should probably look at the 7 categories of waste. These were originally identified by Taiichi Ohno, who was really instrumental in developing the Toyota production system.
7 categories. Okay, all right, what are they?
Okay, first there's overproduction. This means making more than is currently needed or making it before it's actually required. Interestingly, while it seems obvious, overproduction often comes from, a fear of shortages or just a desire to keep machines running. It highlights a conflict sometimes between traditional efficiency metrics and actual customer demand.
Right, keeping busy versus making what's needed.
Exactly. Then we have inventory. So holding more raw materials, work in progress, or even finished goods than is absolutely minimally necessary at any given point. Waiting is another key waste. That's when products are just sitting idle, waiting for the next stage of production.
Like bottlenecks.
Exactly like bottlenecks. Motion refers to any movement of equipment or, importantly, people that doesn't directly contribute to the task at hand. Unnecessary walking, reaching, that sort of thing.
Okay.
Then there's transportation. Moving products around when that movement isn't actually required for their processing. Think forklifts, moving things unnecessarily. Defects, that's anything that isn't done correctly the first time and needs repair or rework. Big cost driver there.
Definitely.
And finally, overprocessing. Basically, performing more work on a product than the customer actually values or is willing to pay for. Adding features nobody wants, for example.
Okay, yeah, I can definitely see how all of those can really drag down efficiency. The source also mentioned strain processing and continuous flow of production as characteristics of lean. What do those mean?
Well, strain processing isn't a super common term in standard lean literature. It might be referring to overburdening resources, pushing people or machines too hard, which is actually something lean aims to eliminate because it causes inefficiencies and errors.
Ah, okay.
However, continuous flow of production is absolutely a core lean principle. It means striving for a really smooth, uninterrupted movement of products through the entire production process, minimizing any stops, delays, or those bottlenecks we mentioned.
Right.
And the overarching goal is always to constantly reduce the total time it takes for a product to move through that entire value stream, from raw material to customer.
Got it. So, if a company really commits to this, to lean management, what are the expected benefits? What kind of positive results can they realistically anticipate?
Oh, the benefits can be quite substantial. You typically expect to see improved quality and significant reduction in errors.
Hmm.
That's largely due to that continuous flow and the strong emphasis on doing things right the first time.
Hmm.
Inventory levels should drop dramatically because, well, you're only producing, buying, or storing exactly what's needed for the immediate next step in the process. You'd also likely see a reduction in the physical space required, maybe through implementing things like manufacturing cells and using smaller, more flexible machines. This can allow single operators to manage processes with much less movement.
Smaller footprint, less stuff sitting around. Yeah, that makes logical sense. What else? What other benefits?
Well, overall, manufacturing flexibility should increase significantly. By focusing only on those activities that genuinely generate value, the organization gains more lead time, more time to respond effectively to customer needs, making them much more adaptable to market changes.
Okay.
Furthermore, by creating a more transparent workshop floor, essentially by reducing errors and clearing out that excess inventory, it becomes much precisely. And there are other important advantages too. Often, a safer work environment results. Manufacturing cells typically involve more frequent task execution within a defined, controlled area, which can actually reduce those unexpected, often risky operations that are a common root cause of workplace accidents.
Interesting.
And perhaps surprisingly to some, employee morale can also see a real boost. When production problems are identified and resolved quickly, it provides immediate, clear feedback to the employees. This fosters a sense of ownership, and can significantly increase their job satisfaction.
Happier, safer employees, better quality, less waste.
So,
Yeah, that sounds like a pretty compelling win-win. But the source also touched on some of the specific problems that lean management is really designed to tackle head-on. What are those key issues?
right. Lean is often implemented specifically to address persistent issues, things like low productivity. Lean increases overall output, making organizations more capable of satisfying customer demands and ultimately achieving higher profitability. It also directly tackles long lead times. When customer complaints or issues aren't resolved promptly, it just leads to more dissatisfaction. Lean enhances flexibility, giving companies more time to solve problems thoroughly and effectively.
Okay.
Organizations facing high operating costs can find significant opportunities for cost control simply by eliminating that waste we keep talking about. The very presence of uncontrolled waste is a primary target. By focusing only on value-generating activities, you optimize the use of limited resources. And as we'll discuss later, techniques like Kaizen are integral to ensuring continuous future improvement in waste reduction.
Right, that continuous cycle.
Exactly. And finally, dissatisfied customers and employees, they're a major concern for any business, right? Lean helps create tangible value for customers and provides that immediate feedback and sense of accomplishment for employees, which are both crucial for boosting satisfaction levels. The source even mentions the importance of things like WAKE's programs, which stands for What Our Customers Are Saying. Using those in conjunction with Lean helps keep the organization aligned with customer needs.
Right, keeping everyone happy both inside and outside the company. The source also included a little graphic, figure 8-1, showing the key stakeholders in lean management. It was like a triangle.
Yes, that was a simple but effective visual. It really highlighted the interconnected relationship between the organization itself, its employees, and its customers, showing them as the central and really equally important players needed for a successful lean implementation.
Okay. Moving on, the discussion then shifted focus to just-in-time, or JIT. How does JIT fit into this bigger picture, this broader lean philosophy?
Just in time, or JIT, is described essentially as a collection of interconnected ideas. They're specifically designed to streamline a company's entire production process. The fundamental goal is to systematically eliminate all forms of waste, whether that's wasted time, excess materials, or underutilized labor throughout the whole process. And critically, JIT is noted for its significant and generally very positive impact on overall product costs.
So it's like taking those general lean principles and translating them into very specific, actionable steps for production and purchasing.
Precisely. The source makes it very clear that JIT operates as a pull method. That means it directly responds to actual customer demand. This is unlike a traditional push method where production is based on forecasts. You make stuff and hope to sell it.
Right.
In JIT, you only produce something precisely when there's a demonstrated need for it downstream in the production chain. Nothing gets made until it's actually needed for the next step.
That makes immediate sense, especially in terms of minimizing the amount of inventory you're holding on to. The source even had a test your understanding question, asking for key points that support lean management. What were the main takeaways from that?
Yeah, the key points highlighted were, first, that lean isn't confined to just one specific industry. It can be successfully adopted by pretty much any production-oriented organization. Second, the principles and the specific goals of a lean implementation are actually determined by the organization itself. This provides a high degree of flexibility in how lean practices are applied.
Okay.
And importantly, it emphasizes the absolute necessity of cooperative efforts across different departmental teams and business units within the organization. This fosters improved collaboration, encourages broader participation, and ultimately leads to employee empowerment. It's definitely not a strategy that can just be implemented in isolation by, say, just the manufacturing department.
Teamwork really does seem to be right at the heart of making lean work effectively. The Chartered Institute of Management Accountants, or CIMA, also provided some formal definitions. What did they have to say specifically about JIT?
Right. CIMA defines just-in-time as a method that aims to produce or purchase products or components only at the exact moment they are needed, either by customers or for use in the production process itself, rather than storing them in inventory. They really reinforce that idea of it being a pull method, driven directly by actual demand. They also provide specific definitions for just-in-time production, describing it as a production system where each component on a line is produced only when it's required for the very next stage. And just-in-time purchasing, which is a system where materials are bought under contract so that their receipt and subsequent use coincide as closely in time as possible.
So ideally, everything arrives exactly when it's needed, completely eliminating the need for big warehouses and lots of storage. And there was a figure 8.2 that gave a quick overview of the JIT method.
Yes, that just offered a concise visual summary of the core concept, really aligning the flow of materials directly with actual demand to minimize both waste and the cost of holding unnecessary inventory.
Okay. The discussion then went into the specifics of a just-in-time initiative. What does that actually mean in practice for a company trying to implement this?
Well, a JIT purchasing initiative involves several key elements, all aimed at dramatically reducing raw material inventory and, at the same time, improving the quality of the parts received from suppliers. This includes arranging to receive the exact parts or materials needed from suppliers precisely on the required date and at the exact time they are needed in production.
That sounds like tight scheduling.
Extremely. These materials are then often delivered directly to the production floor for immediate use. It frequently involves engineering staff from the purchasing company actually visiting the supplier's facilities to audit their production processes, ensuring they can meet the quality standards. Another crucial element is setting up an electronic data interchange, or EDI system. That's a way for companies to digitally swap information like orders and delivery schedules directly with their suppliers, cutting down on paperwork and potential delays. Some companies even arrange for suppliers to drop off specific products directly at the particular machines where they will be used first.
Wow, that's an incredibly tight level of coordination needed with all your suppliers. It sounds intense. What about the production side, implementing JIT within the factory itself?
Right, a JIT production initiative focuses on significantly reducing the amount of work-in-progress stuff that's half-finished, and also minimizing the number of products that get made before any defects are identified and corrected. This, in turn, leads to lower costs from scrap and rework.
How do they achieve that?
Typically, it's achieved by aggressively working to shorten the setup times on manufacturing machinery. This eliminates the need for those traditional long production runs of just one single item. It also involves streamlining the flow of parts smoothly from one machine to the next. Additionally, employees are often cross-trained so they can operate multiple different machines and even perform basic maintenance tasks themselves.
So it's about shifting towards smaller batches, making equipment changeovers much faster, and having a more versatile, multi-skilled workforce. And the source also briefly mentioned that these changes often require adjustments to accounting systems.
Yes, absolutely. The implementation of JIT frequently necessitates significant changes in how a company's accounting systems operate, particularly those systems that deal with tracking purchases and managing inventory costs. This is because the traditional accounting methods for tracking and paying for materials might not be well suited to the fast-paced, minimal inventory environment that JIT creates.
And there was figure A.3, which illustrated the deep level of integration required with the entire supply chain. It looked like a really complex, interconnected network.
Exactly. It really emphasized how JIT demands a very close, very collaborative relationship with all your suppliers, essentially treating them almost as a highly integrated extension of the company's own internal operations.
Okay, let's delve into the specific action plan for each of these JIT initiatives. What concrete steps does a company need to take to make this a reality? Let's start with the supplier side again.
Okay, so to ensure you receive the exact products or parts from suppliers precisely on the right date and time, the purchasing staff needs to conduct thorough audits and evaluations of their suppliers. They also need to be prepared to switch suppliers if the current ones can't consistently meet the strict delivery requirements of a JIT system.
No room for error there.
Not much. And the practice of directly delivering products to the production floor for immediate use is designed to avoid that often time-consuming process of inspecting incoming parts. Instead, the focus shifts to having engineering staff proactively visit supplier sites to ensure they're producing high-quality parts and even offering assistance to help them improve their standards.
So quality assurance moves upstream.
Precisely. Establishing a reliable communication system is crucial too, whether it's simple fax machines back in the day or sophisticated EDI or integrated computer systems now. This is essential for accurately telling suppliers the exact quantities needed, especially once they're certified for quality and delivery. And logistics might even involve suppliers making small, frequent deliveries right to the company, perhaps even dropping them off at the specific machines that will use them first.
It sounds like a complete transformation of traditional purchasing and logistics.
Yeah.
What about on the production floor? Specifically reducing those crucial setup times on machinery? That seems like a big hurdle.
It is a major undertaking. Traditionally, companies tried to minimize changeovers because they were slow and costly. This led to those long production runs. But with JIT, the focus completely flips to making setups incredibly fast and efficient. The source mentions specific techniques, like videotaping the entire setup process.
Videotaping.
Yeah, and then having teams, usually industrial engineers, and the machine operators themselves carefully analyze those recordings. The goal is to identify and systematically eliminate any steps that are non-essential or just time-wasting. By rigorously applying these methods, companies can often slash setup times dramatically, from hours down to maybe just minutes or even seconds in some cases.
Hours to minutes or seconds, that's a huge improvement.
Yeah.
But even with faster setups, what about ensuring a smooth flow of parts between machines, especially if they operate at different speeds? That sounds like it could easily create new bottlenecks.
That's a very critical point, you're right. Differences in machine speeds can lead to work in progress piling up and also cause delays in spotting defective parts. The source highlights two key solutions for this. The first is using Kanban cards.
Kanban, I've heard of that.
Yeah, they're essentially visual signaling devices. Think of them as notification cards sent by a downstream machine, the one further along the process, to each upstream machine that supplies it with parts. The Kanban card basically authorizes the upstream machine to produce only enough components to meet the immediate needs of the downstream machine. This authorization then flows upstream in turn. It's a pull method, starting at the end of the process, and it effectively prevents work-in-progress buildup because production only happens when a Kanban signal says, I need more parts now.
Okay, so it's like a visual trigger. We're ready for the next small batch. What's the other solution mentioned?
The second key solution is implementing cellular manufacturing. This involves physically grouping different types of machines together into dedicated work cells. These cells are often operated by a single, multi-skilled operator who's responsible for moving each part within the cell from one machine to the next, doing all the necessary steps.
Right.
This cellular setup completely eliminates work-in-progress buildup between machines within that cell. Plus, it allows the single operator to immediately spot any defects because they're handling the part through all its stages right there. An added bonus is often lower maintenance costs, as cell machines tend to be smaller and simpler than giant automated ones, and it's generally much easier and cheaper to reconfigure the factory for different products using cells, avoiding the huge cost of moving massive equipment.
So it's like creating these focused mini factories within the larger plant. And the source suggests using both Kanban and cellular manufacturing together can be particularly effective.
Exactly. Yeah. They aren't mutually exclusive at all. In fact, they're highly complementary. Using them together can often lead to achieving very low defect rates and drastically reducing the investment tied up in work-in-progress inventory.
This all sounds like it would require a very different approach to the workforce. The source touched on that too, didn't it?
Absolutely. It requires a significant transformation. You move away from the old model where a worker just tends a single machine, which frankly can lead to boredom and maybe less focus on quality. With JIT and cellular manufacturing, workers are often trained to operate multiple machines and take much greater responsibility for the quality of the products they're making.
Or engagement.
Potentially, yes. This broader scope can increase interest and engagement. The HR department plays a critical role here, providing comprehensive training on operating different machines, performing basic maintenance, identifying errors, understanding the whole system flow, and even knowing when it's necessary to stop the line to fix a problem. It's essentially a complete retraining, focusing on a broader range of activities and responsibilities.
So, cultivating a more engaged, multi-skilled workforce. And what's the key outcome of having this empowered workforce in a JIT environment?
A key outcome is that these workers are given the authority to stop a machine, or even the whole line, as soon as they see a problem. They're often empowered to either fix it themselves right there or immediately call the repair team. This leads to very rapid resolution of most execution issues.
Right, immediate action.
And this has a profound impact on traditional variance analysis in accounting. Accountants used to spend ages at month-end compiling variance reports, investigating why things went wrong weeks ago. But with production staff fixing issues in minutes, that kind of historical variance reporting becomes largely a waste of time. Management is dealing with current problems in real time, not looking at old data.
So it fosters a much more proactive, real-time approach to problem solving. That makes sense. And the source also mentioned this approach can even eliminate the need for suppliers to send invoices. That sounds quite radical.
It does, yeah. With a mature JIT system, the company often relies solely on its own internal production records to figure out payments. Because suppliers deliver directly to the line, bypassing traditional receiving docs and paperwork, there isn't always a supplier invoice to match. Instead, the company's accounting system calculates the quantity of each part used by looking at the finished goods produced and multiplying by the components listed in the bill of materials, the recipe, essentially.
Okay.
Accountants then pay suppliers based on this theoretical usage quantity, often adjusted for any scrap that happened during the company's production so suppliers aren't unfairly penalized. This system effectively eliminates the need for suppliers to send individual invoices for every delivery.
Wow, that's a massive simplification of accounts payable. So it's clear JIT drives huge changes across the entire organization, not just production. The source then summarized the key characteristics of the JIT method. What were those defining features?
The key characteristics include organizing production into those efficient manufacturing cells we discussed. Also, hiring and actively retaining workers with multiple skills, enabling them to do various operations, including basic repairs and maintenance, reducing downtime. Implementing total quality management, TQM principles, is crucial for eliminating defects, especially with minimal buffers.
Right, because a problem stops everything.
Exactly. The emphasis on significantly reducing setup times makes small batches economical. And finally, the careful selection of suppliers who can consistently deliver high-quality materials directly to the workshop floor precisely on time is absolutely essential.
Okay, those all tie back nicely to the core lean principles of minimizing waste. The source then offered a conceptual view looking at both pros and cons of JIT. What were the main goals highlighted, and what were some potential drawbacks?
The primary goals of JIT are pretty clear.
Yeah.
Consistently meet customer demand on time, provide high-quality products, and do it all at the lowest possible total cost. However, potential drawbacks include the difficulty in always accurately forecasting demand, which makes operating with near-zero inventory challenging.
Risky.
It can be. And the lack of significant inventory buffers exposes the organization to any disruption in the supply chain. A problem with one key supplier could potentially halt production very quickly.
So a sudden hiccup with the supplier could have a much bigger, faster impact. That makes sense. And there was a Did You Know section highlighting essential preconditions for successfully implementing JIT. What needs to be in place first?
Right. The preconditions mentioned included needing relatively low levels of waste already present in the organization's processes. It also requires a somewhat narrow supplier base, but with exceptionally strong, reliable relationships specialists, really. Efficient, robust information systems are absolutely crucial for the coordination needed. The organization also needs relatively predictable customer demand patterns. Established total quality management principles are vital for quality. Error-free materials from suppliers are essential. And finally, proactive preventive maintenance programs need to be solid to minimize equipment failures.
So it's definitely not something you just switch on overnight. It needs a strong foundation and mature supplier relationships. The source also had figure A.4 summarizing the impact of JIT. What were the key impact areas?
That figure highlighted the significant impact JIT has on the cost of waste, overall overhead costs, and potentially product prices.
Yeah.
With JIT's relentless focus on eliminating all waste assets, time, materials, you generally expect to see sharp declines in any product costs.
Okay.
Overhead costs related to material handling, facilities, quality inspection also tend to decrease substantially due to reduced inventory and smaller space needs. Regarding product prices, if a company masters delivering high quality exactly on time, they might be able to charge a premium, especially if reliability is poor in their industry. But the source cautions this isn't guaranteed. It depends heavily on what customers in that specific market value most.
Okay, so reduce waste, lower overhead, maybe higher prices. Sounds attractive if you can pull it off. The discussion then moved to backflush in the JIT method. What exactly is backflush accounting and why is it relevant here?
Backflush accounting is a simplified way to account for inventory costs, particularly suited for the high transaction volumes common in JIT. It essentially eliminates detailed data entry for every inventory movement. Instead, you only record the completion of the finished product. And at that point, the system backflushes. It calculates the quantities of all raw materials and components that should have been used to make that finished quantity, based on the product's bill of materials, the recipe. These calculated quantities are then automatically subtracted from the beginning inventory balances to figure out what should be left.
So it's like saying we made X finished goods, so we must have used Y of component A and Z of component B. Sounds like way less paperwork. But the source also warned about serious problems. What are the main downsides?
Yeah, there are several significant potential issues. First, the production reporting that feeds the system must be dead accurate. If the number of finished goods reported is wrong, the wrong components and quantities get removed from inventory records. This is a big problem with high employee turnover or poor training on accurate data entry.
Okay.
Scrap reporting is another critical one. Any abnormal scrap during production must be promptly tracked and recorded. If not, those scrap materials just vanish from the backflush system, leading to inaccurate inventory figures. Again, turnover or lack of training makes this worse. Lot tracing, tracking which batch of raw material went into which finished product becomes virtually impossible with pure backflush. That's a huge issue if you need recall capability. Only systems that specifically track lot numbers as they're used can do this, and those tend to be more complex and expensive.
A big compliance issue, potentially.
Definitely. Finally, inventory accuracy in the physical warehouse can be tricky. The backflush transaction usually only happens once a day, but stock is constantly moving to production throughout the day, making it hard to have truly accurate, real-time warehouse records.
So while it cuts paperwork, it heavily relies on accurate data from the production floor. If that's unreliable, you've got major inventory issues. The source really emphasized the role of production staff here.
Absolutely. It stresses that if production staff can't provide reasonably accurate reporting on production quantities and scrap, you get garbage in, garbage out. Inaccurate entries quickly destroy inventory record accuracy, forcing frequent, costly physical counts to fix things. The source basically concludes that backflush success is directly tied to investing in a better paid, experienced, stable production workforce with very low turnover.
That makes perfect sense. You can't automate accuracy if the human input isn't reliable.
Okay, the discussion then shifted to practical insight, JIT practices, using a case study about M&M Nashik. What were they trying to achieve with JIT?
Right. M&M Nashik's main goal for implementing JIT at their plant was to drastically reduce their operating inventory levels. A key business objective for them was actively involving all their suppliers directly in the production process. They wanted suppliers to feel supported and actively contribute to changes. They saw this deep integration as essential for cutting response times and enabling a true just-in-time approach.
And what were some specific measurable objectives for this JIT project? Their specific goals included ensuring active participation from all key suppliers, making sure suppliers were informed about process changes and could contribute insights. They aimed to upgrade supply strategies across a large network, about 400 vendors, 150 daily delivery vehicles, managing around 1,100 different parts.
Right.
Improving parts refill efficiency on the assembly line and minimizing stockouts to support flexible manufacturing were also critical.
That sounds like a complex operation to bring under JIT control. How did they plan and implement these changes?
They started with a comprehensive value stream mapping, or VSS, survey. This was to create a detailed concept plan for their whole JIT and supply chain initiative. It involved things like determining optimal weight units for parts, how they should be arranged on the line, defining refill triggers, outlining score management tools, and reviewing existing vendor supply methods.
And what was the core solution they implemented based on that analysis?
The solution involved moving to modular standard metal containers and totes for parts, designed for Indian truck dimensions. They focused on presenting parts to workers efficiently. They identified 25 critical JIT parts to be supplied in sequence. They implemented a 2-level shelf system for totes with dynamic allocation and picking. They also shifted to containerized supply from local vendors with full truck takeoff. These changes ultimately cut material handling staff, reduced refill lead time significantly, and boosted manufacturing flexibility.
Sounds like a well-integrated solution. What were the key benefits M&M Nashik saw from these JIT implementations?
By making suppliers true partners, they significantly reduced inventory levels. Suppliers gained real-time visibility into supply status, payments, and other parameters. All participants, from supplier to dealer, could manage changes better using a specific IT solution and defined processes. Warehouse setup time was cut significantly. This improved productivity and their bottom line. Focusing employees on specific areas sped up processing and reduced fatigue. And finally, there was a noted increased emphasis on building strong, collaborative supplier relationships.
It really hammers home that JIT isn't just internal. It demands a fundamental shift in supplier relationships. The discussion then moved to illustration 1, a case about KP Limited, KPL, considering JIT for their Kia product. What was their situation and the director's view?
KPL's management director wasn't happy with their current purchasing and production. They were seriously discussing using JIT for the Kia product. The director believed JIT, as a pull method responding to demand, unlike push methods using stock as buffers, could significantly cut inventory carrying costs and other overheads.
What were some key operational details or challenges for KPL?
They relied heavily on contract labor, with about 95% efficiency. They had to pay for a minimum of 4,000 hours monthly, yielding only 3,800 standard production hours. Getting more hours meant paying overtime at a 45% premium over the normal 8 or 10-hour rate. To avoid overtime, they used all normal hours, leading to high inventory in low-demand months to cover high-demand months. Their inventory holding cost was 70 years per month per standard hour of production held. They also provided a demand forecast for the first 6 months of 2023.
And what was the specific task in this KPL case?
The listener, acting as KPL's chief accountant, was asked to comment on the management director's viewpoint about the potential benefits of adopting JIT for their operations.
So, analyzing the financial impact and operational factors of KPL moving to JIT, what did the financial analysis show?
The analysis compared total inventory holding costs under the current method versus potential overtime costs under a JIT method, aligned more closely with fluctuating monthly demand. The calculations showed a substantial inventory holding cost of $2,057,600 under the current method for 6 months. Shifting to JIT was projected to incur overtime costs in high-demand months, totaling $2,016,583 over the same period. This comparison suggested a potential net saving of $41,017 if KPL switched to JIT.
So, purely based on those numbers, JIT looked like it could offer direct cost savings, but the analysis didn't stop there, right? There were important notes about other factors KPL needed to consider.
Absolutely. The notes emphasized that while the numbers looked promising, KPL needed to carefully consider several other critical operational and strategic factors before deciding. These included the absolute necessity of ensuring reliable material deliveries from suppliers exactly when needed, requiring thorough supplier vetting. They'd need to proactively address quality issues, possibly requiring engineers to visit supplier sites for audits and assistance. Furthermore, KPL would need to focus on improving their own internal process and design quality, aiming for zero defects. And finally, they needed to assess their workforce's efficiency and flexibility. They'd need to ensure laborers could perform various operations effectively, likely requiring significant retraining and a focus on a broader scope of activities.
So it became clear that while the initial financials looked good, successful JIT for KPL required a much broader assessment and significant changes across their entire operation. Okay, the conversation then transitioned to Kaizen costing. For listeners maybe not familiar, what exactly is Kaizen and how does it relate specifically to reducing costs?
Right. Kaizen is a Japanese word meaning continuous improvement. So Kaizen costing is a specific method for systematically reducing costs within an organization, but through implementing small, continuous, and incremental improvements. It's fundamentally based on the belief that, well, nothing is ever truly perfect, so there's always room for improvement and ongoing cost reduction.
So it's not about one big revolution, but lots of smaller evolutions over time.
Exactly that. In Kaizen costing, the targets for improvement and cost reduction are typically set based on the actual performance results from the previous period. The main aim is to incrementally reduce the actual costs from the current period and the upcoming period or periods. The source even included figure A.5, showing how Daihatsu Motor Company uses a Kaizen costing flowchart.
And how does this Kaizen concept specifically relate to the broader lean manufacturing principles we've been discussing?
Lean manufacturing is very much built on this core idea of Kaizen, continuous improvement. It involves constantly reviewing, analyzing, and then improving existing processes throughout the organization. The source helpfully contrasts this with business process reengineering, or BPR, which usually seeks big improvements through one-time, radical, often disruptive changes.
Right, Kaizen is more gradual.
Exactly. The Kaizen philosophy emphasizes that truly significant, sustainable improvements often come from many small, incremental changes implemented consistently and maintained over the long haul.
So slow and steady wins the race in terms of improvement with Kaizen?
That's the essence. And this strategy aims to involve workers from across multiple functions and levels, encouraging collaborative work to identify problems, propose solutions, and improve specific processes in their areas. Kaizen costing, specifically, often focuses on eliminating waste in production, assembly, distribution, and removing unnecessary work stages.
Sounds like there's a big overlap with the waste elimination focus of lean thinking.
Definitely a strong relationship. And while many of these points might also come up during value engineering in target costing, that initial value engineering might not catch everything. So the Kaizen costing framework is designed to continuously refine processes and eliminate additional costs by essentially repeating value engineering steps during ongoing production.
Okay.
The source acknowledges that Kaizen costing reductions are generally much smaller than those from initial value engineering. But these smaller continuous savings are still very worthwhile, especially as competitive pressure often forces prices down over time. Any savings allow the company to maintain margins while adapting.
So it's about constantly chipping away at costs and inefficiencies throughout the product lifecycle. What does the Kaizen costing process actually look like? What are the key stages?
The process, as outlined, typically involves three main stages. Stage 1 is establishing clear cost reduction targets, the Kaizen cost targets. Stage 2 involves ascertaining the difference by systematically comparing those targets with the actual costs incurred later. And Stage 3 is focused on preparing and actively implementing a detailed cost reduction plan based on thorough value analysis of the processes involved. Figure 8.6 in the source gives a visual of this three-stage flow.
Okay, set a goal, measure against it, plan and act to improve further. Logical cycle. The source then compared Kaizen costing with standard costing. What were the key differences highlighted there?
The comparison table showed several key distinctions. In terms of technique, standard costing is mainly a cost control technique, staying within limits, while Kaizen costing is a cost reduction technique, actively lowering costs. Regarding the current situation, standard costing generally accepts the current situation as baseline, while Kaizen costing embraces continuous improvement within situations. The focus of standard costing is meeting preset cost standards. Kaizen costing focuses on achieving specific cost reduction targets.
Different mindsets.
Very different. The time horizon for standard costing is typically longer term, year on year, while Kaizen costing uses shorter cycles, monthly, quarterly. For variance analysis, standard costing compares actual versus standard. Kaizen costing focuses more on the gap between actual cost and the often more aggressive Kaizen target cost rather than traditional variance. Finally, action on variance. Standard costing involves investigating and reporting variances. Kaizen costing emphasizes understanding why the Kaizen target was missed, often using problem-solving tools like Jidoka.
So, standard costing seems more about maintaining the status quo within limits, while Kaizen costing is much more proactive, constantly pushing costs down. The source then had a section on the essence of Kaizen, outlining 5 core principles. What are these fundamentals?
The 5 core principles embedded in Kaizen are: first, know your customer, really understand them and their needs so the business can add value to their experience. Second, let it flow. Everyone should aim to create value and eliminate waste, targeting zero waste. Third, go to the Gemba value is created where things actually happen. The Gemba, the actual place. Go there, follow the work.
Be where the action is.
Exactly. Fourth, empower your people, set common goals, provide methods and tools, organize teams effectively. And fifth, be transparent. Performance and improvement should be tangible, visible, based on factual data.
Those principles sound broadly applicable, not just manufacturing. The source also listed foundations of Kaizen practice. What are those key elements?
The foundations include seeking gradual but steady improvements at an acceptable cost. It promotes collective decision-making and applying everyone's knowledge. It believes there's no real limit to the level of improvements possible over time. Kaizen involves setting standards and then continually improving those standards for long-term sustainable gains. The focus is always on eliminating waste, improving systems, enhancing productivity, and crucially, it involves all employees, all areas of the business. Figure 8.7 visualize these foundations.
Very inclusive, very iterative. There was another, did you know, about how the cost reduction target is set in Kaizen. How does that usually work?
When setting the target, the workforce is actively empowered through a bottom-up approach. This means the employees actually doing the work are asked to participate in setting the target and are encouraged to find and suggest the means to achieve it. Figure 8.8 illustrated this idea of consensus in Kaizen.
So not just management dictating goals, the people doing the work have a direct say. That probably fosters more ownership. Okay, then a case scenario about M India Limited, MIL, a subsidiary of a Japanese automaker. MIL used standard costing, and the parent company's CEO suggested Kaizen costing. What was MIL's situation and the recommendation?
Right. MIL was an established Indian car manufacturer using standard costing. Budgets were revised semi-annually by finance, approved by the board. Finance prepared monthly variance reports comparing actuals to budget for board review. Mr. Suzuki, the group CEO of the parent company, Lion, felt Kaizen costing would be a better method for planning and control at MIL.
And what was the specific task posed in this MIL scenario?
The task was to recommend the significant changes needed in MIL's existing planning and control methods to help them effectively adopt Kaizen costing concepts.
So if MIL were to shift from standard costing to Kaizen costing, what are the key fundamental changes they'd need to make?
The solution highlighted several major changes. First, shifting from a standard cost control system to a cost reduction system. Standard costing assumes stability and focuses on meeting standards. Kaizen costing assumes continuous improvement is possible and aims to achieve cost reduction targets. So a fundamental mindset shift from control to reduction.
Okay.
Second, a reduction in the periodicity of setting standards and variance analysis. MIL revised standards semi-annually and did monthly variance reports. Kaizen costing uses much shorter target periods, like weekly or monthly. So MIL would need to reduce the standard setting period, maybe to monthly, and adapt variance reporting accordingly, perhaps focusing more on hitting the short-term Kaizen targets.
More frequent adjustments.
Exactly. And finally, and maybe most importantly, greater participation of executives or workers in setting standards. Kaizen highly values input from those actually doing the manufacturing when setting standards. MIL's current practice, where finance fixed budgets with only board concurrence, would need to change to incorporate direct input and collaboration from the shop floor and line management.
Those are pretty fundamental shifts. Definitely more than just changing accounting formulas. It requires a real cultural change. Okay, the conversation then moved to 5S. What is 5S and why is it seen as such an important foundation?
5S is introduced as the foundational element for TPM, total productive maintenance. It's basically a workplace organization method using 5 Japanese words: seri, seiten, seiso, seiketsu, and shitsuke. In essence, 5S describes a systematic way to organize and manage a workspace for maximum efficiency and effectiveness. It involves identifying and storing items used, maintaining the area and items, and crucially, sustaining that new order over time.
So creating and keeping a clean, organized, efficient workspace. The source noted cost reduction methods differ from standard cost control, with Kaizen aiming for continuous improvement. Where does 5S fit in this picture?
5S provides the essential groundwork for both cost reduction and continuous improvement. By establishing a well-organized, clean workplace, you inherently eliminate various wastes, time searching, wasted motion, clutter, taking up space. This cleaner environment also makes it much easier to spot problems or inefficiencies, which is fundamental for Kaizen and broader lean initiatives. Figure 8.9 visually outlined the 5S phases.
And what are those 5 phases and their common English translations? Helps to remember them.
Okay, the 5 phases are Seri, usually translated as sorting or sorting out. Seitan, meaning straightening or set in order. Seiso, which is shining or sweep clean. Seitsetsu, meaning standardizing. And finally, Shitsuki, which translates to sustaining.
Okay, let's look at each S. Starting with sorting, Sari, what does this first phase involve?
Sorting involves thoroughly reviewing everything, materials, tools, equipment in a specific work area, including storage. The goal is to categorize items based on necessity. The course suggests categories like absolutely not needed, needed but not now, needed but not here, needed but not this quantity. But businesses can adapt these.
Right.
Visual aids can really help here, like colored tags, saving time and helping everyone understand what to do. The source mentions 2 common tags, a red nameplate for unwanted items needing action soon, and a yellow nameplate for needed items, but not now, to be moved to storage with a defined timeline.
So a systematic decluttering, keeping only essentials nearby. There was a did you know question here. What key questions should you ask when sorting?
The key questions are, what is this needed for? How much is needed? When is it needed, now or later? And where is it needed? Answering these helps decide whether to keep, move, or discard each item.
How does this sorting phase support broader lean thinking?
Sorting directly supports lean by helping identify various wastes, obsolete items, old parts, tools, defective items needing repair, scrap items, leftovers, misplaced items not in their designated spot, and unnecessary items, surplus or not useful. Removing these frees up space, reduces clutter, and creates a more efficient environment.
Okay, on to the second S, straightening Seaton. What's the main focus here?
Straightening is all about systematic arrangement. The source quotes Fayol, a place for everything and everything in its place. It involves arranging all the necessary items, kept after sorting, in their most efficient and accessible locations. The goal is easy selection and smooth workflow, saving search time and eliminating wasted motion through visual management, aiming for a search-free, count-free setup. Frequently used items go nearby.
So not just tidy, but intentionally organized for efficiency. Another, did you know? How does straightening generate benefits?
The benefits include making work easier by removing obstacles and evaluating necessary items based on cost or use frequency, reducing disturbances from unnecessary items, now removed, and preventing reaccumulation by having clear spots for everything.
And how do you actually implement this systematic arrangement? Another, did you know, gave guidance.
Steps include, first, analyze the current situation and workflows. Then, decide which things go where. Next, decide how they should be stored. Finally, motivate everyone to follow the rules using visual aids like indexes, labels, designated locations.
It needs planning and reinforcement. How does straightening contribute to lean goals?
It eliminates wasted search time. It helps quickly spot abnormalities. If something's out of place, it's obvious.
Yeah.
It saves space through efficient arrangement. It improves work efficiency as things are where they should be. And it ensures things are available when needed.
Third, S, shining. Say so. Sounds straightforward, but what are the key aspects?
Shining goes beyond basic cleaning. It's about cleanliness inside and outside everything. Fewer items after sorting straightening means less cleaning needed. Workers usually take responsibility for cleaning their own areas daily. This ensures safety, provides a clean, comfortable workspace, and impacts morale. Shining also includes inspecting machinery and equipment during cleaning front, back, top, bottom, helping spot maintenance issues early.
So cleaning plus inspection. Fourth S, standardizing. Sikitsu. How do you standardize the first 3 S's?
Standardizing involves establishing and documenting the best practices developed during sorting, straightening, and shining. These become part of the organization's standard operating procedures, SOPs, so the first 3 S's become habits. Organizations need smart standards. Strive for standardized arrangements. Every process should have a standard.
Documenting procedures, ensuring consistency, and the final S, sustaining Shitsuke. How do you make this all stick long term?
Sustaining is about maintaining the standards, making 5S a way of life. This requires regular daily monitoring, fostering ownership, dividing areas, using ongoing red tag campaigns to keep finding unneeded items, visual communication, photos showing standards, structured communication, continuous training, periodic audits at all levels, and motivating the workforce through recognition. Assigning responsibilities and integrating 5S into routine work helps sustain it.
And ongoing effort needing leadership, monitoring, training, reinforcement. Okay. The source then linked 5S and inherent benefits with figure A10. What are the key benefits from consistently applying 5S?
Figure A10 showed 5S as a continuous cycle leading to inherent benefits.
Yeah.
Higher quality, increased productivity and efficiency, lower costs, less waste, better flow, and increased safety. These are seen as direct outcomes of a consistently clean, organized, well-maintained workplace.
Makes sense. The source also mentioned 5S in lean product and process development. How can 5S apply in engineering and design?
In Lean, information is an output of engineering design. The idea is that cluttered surfaces, physical or digital, distract, wasting fractions of seconds. Old equipment hides new, forcing people to ask which to use. 5S is being applied beyond manufacturing, healthcare, education, government. Figure A11 showed 5S as foundational not just for TPM but for various lean techniques.
A core principle underpinning many aspects. Finally, 5S methodology is a core support for continuous improvement, linking it to the PDCA cycle. How does 5S fit Plan-Do-Check Act?
The source suggests a 5S is a key enabler in the do phase of PDCA. By establishing a clean, organized, standardized workplace via 5S, you create the conditions for subsequent continuous improvement efforts, plan, do, to be more effective. Check and act, then build on this foundation, monitoring results and refining processes. Figure A12 showed 5S implementation as part of the PDCA cycle.
A practical first step in the continuous improvement journey. Okay, other case scenario. Y&E Chartered Accountants considering 5S for their office. What were their challenges?
Partner E was troubled by office documentation, wanting a solution for efficiency. Senior partner Y, having attended a lean seminar, heard about 5S and drew a parallel. Old files hiding main files, forcing staff to search, just like tools on a messy shop floor. So Y wanted to implement 5S.
Applying manufacturing principles to a knowledge work environment. What specific advice was given for implementing 5S at Y&E?
The solution tailored 5S to the office. Sorting, SARI. Sort and remove unnecessary files, papers, books to clean up work areas, making relevant items easy to find. Straightening, Satan. Systematically arrange necessary items efficiently. Proper indexing and labeling of physical files. Logical organization within files. Similar approach for digital files folders with clear naming conventions. Frequently use items nearby, less used further away. Clearly labeled storage. Shining, say so. Keep work areas clean and safe. Also an inspection process. Suggested involving employees 15-20 months daily for tidying. Digitally, deleting unimportant files. Standardizing, Seiketsu. Document best practices for file management, etc. Establish standard measures, maybe color-coding files by importance. Sustaining, Shitsuke. Maintain discipline via audits. Continuously apply standards daily, checking for upgrades. Overall, 5S in offices improves process time, reduces errors, and boosts employee satisfaction.
It really shows how adaptable 5S is. Okay, the discussion then moved to total productive maintenance, or TPM.
Yeah.
What is TPM and what are its goals?
Total productive maintenance, TPM, is defined as a holistic method to maintain and improve the integrity of production and quality systems. It aims to keep all equipment in prime operating condition, preventing breakdowns, minimizing delays, and maximizing the overall effectiveness of assets. It involves everyone: operators, maintenance, management and caring for equipment, processes, and systems. The concept originated at Nippon Denso in Japan, a Toyota supplier.
So, maximizing equipment uptime and reliability through a comprehensive, inclusive approach. How does a company typically introduce and implement TPM? What are the phases?
The source outlines 4 main phases. First, the preparation phase, establishing a suitable environment and conducting awareness training. Second, the introduction phase, the official kickoff, informing employees, suppliers, customers. Third, the implementation phase, facilitated by focusing on the 8 key activities or pillars of TPM. And fourth, the institutionalization phase, where TPM becomes fully integrated into the culture, often recognized by TPM awards. Figure A through D10 showed these 8 pillars.
8 pillars, sounds like a lot. What are they and how do they contribute to TPM?
Yes, 8 pillars built on the foundation of 5S. Each focuses on a crucial activity supported by specific techniques. The foundation is 5S TPM, organizing the workplace. Pillar 1 is autonomous maintenance. Operators do basic care, cleaning, lubricating, inspecting. Pillar 2 is focused improvement, Kaizen, continuous small improvements to reduce losses. Pillar 3 is planned maintenance, improving reliability, maintainability, aiming for 0 breakdowns, optimal cost.
Okay.
Pillar 4 is early management, reducing time for new product equipment development. Pillar 5 is quality maintenance, achieving customer satisfaction via high quality. Pillar 6 is training and education, improving knowledge, skills, morale. Pillar 7 is office TPM, applying TPM in administrative areas to cut losses. And Pillar 8 is safety, health, and environment, aiming for zero accidents, zero health damage.
Very comprehensive, covers equipment, people, quality, safety, even admin functions. How do you measure TPM effectiveness? Key metrics.
Yes, the most important measure is overall equipment effectiveness, OEE. Calculating OEE requires identifying and addressing the 6 big losses in manufacturing.
And what are these 6 big losses that OEE targets?
The 6 are: first, equipment failure, breakdowns; second, setup and adjustments, time loss; third, idling and minor stops; fourth, reduced speed, running slower than designed; fifth, reduced yield, startup losses; and sixth, quality defects and rework.
Okay.
The first 2, failure, setup, are time losses used to calculate equipment availability. The third and fourth, idling, reduced speed, are speed losses, determining performance efficiency. The last 2, yield, defects, are quality losses.
So OEE combines availability, performance rate, and quality rate into one number. How's it calculated?
As figure A14 showed, OEE is calculated by multiplying these 3 ratios: availability ratio X, performance ratio X, quality ratio. This gives a single percentage for the overall effectiveness of equipment or a process.
What are considered good OEE scores? Is there a benchmark?
Well, 100% is practically impossible. The source cites research suggesting ideal values are availability 90%, performance 95%, quality 99%. Achieving these gives an OEE around 85%, often considered world-class. However, others argue that maybe 50% is a more realistic target for many, especially early on.
Depends on context.
Yeah.
Okay, illustration 2 involved Kiwi Limited, a parts maker using TPM. What was their OEE calculation?
Kiwi Ltd. had a 12-hour shift, 720 mins. Planned downtime was 45 minutes plus 10 mins cleaning, leaving 665 mins planned production time. Machine NZD10 had 36 mins unplanned stoppage. Cycle time was 10 secs part, 3,360 parts made, 70 rejects. Availability was 66536, 665, equal to 94.59%. Performance, standard time for good parts, 336010860, divided by actual runtime, 66760, subs at 60.29 minutes. Quality, good parts, 3360753,285, divided by total parts, 3360, equals 937.77%. So OEE equals 0.9459 by 0.9777 equals 82.34%.
And the commentary on that, 82.34% OEE.
The commentary said it was very close to the 85% world-class level, so Kiwi should strive to improve further. Availability, 94.59%, was good, above 90%, but focus needed on performance, 89.03%, ideal 95%, and quality, 97.77%, ideal 99%.
Finally, in this section, the relationship between TQM and TPM. What's the connection?
In short, both TQM and TPM aim to make a company more competitive by improving customer satisfaction, reducing lead times, and lowering costs. Employee involvement is essential in both. Both require training and education. Both take time to show sustainable benefits, and top management commitment is crucial for both. The source also provided formulas for operating time, plant production time, and quality rate key for OEE TPM.
Complementary approaches focused on continuous improvement, needing commitment. Okay, the discussion then moved to cellular manufacturing or continuous flow production systems. How does this relate to lean and JIT?
Cellular manufacturing is presented as a specific application or subset of both JIT and lean, often using group technology, grouping similar parts processes. Its goals are moving production forward quickly, making a variety of similar products flexibly, and minimizing waste.
How does it work in practice?
You typically have multiple self-contained work cells on a line. Each cell has machine stations for a specific sequence of jobs. The product moves cell to cell. Cells often have a U-shaped layout, allowing supervisors better oversight with less movement. Its biggest advantage is flexibility. Easy changeovers allow product variety, size changes, layout adjustments. Changeovers can be clean and quick. A cell integrates the processes needed for a specific output, like a part. This reduces extra steps, helps quickly spot problems, and encourages communication within the cell to resolve issues fast. This brings benefits in productivity and quality, while reducing inventory, space, and lead time. Hence, it's called the inside of lean manufacturing.
Creating focused, efficient mini lines. What about implementing it? Initial steps?
Several steps are needed. First, group the parts to be made into families based on similarities, design, or manufacturing needs. Then, perform a methodical analysis of each family, specifically looking at the production flow for manufacturing those families. And unfortunately, that's where our source material cuts off.
Well, even with that cliffhanger, this has been a truly deep dive into the world of lean methodology and its facets. We've covered lean principles, JIT, Kaizen, 5S, TPM, all aiming to cut waste and maximize value.
Absolutely. And as we've seen, when implemented effectively, these can drive significant improvements in efficiency, quality, cost, and customer satisfaction, hitting right on our learners' interest in impactful knowledge.
It's fascinating how interconnected they are, with something like 5S often being the base for broader initiatives like TPM. It really underscores that continuous improvement is a journey, not a destination.
Indeed. And it makes you think, doesn't it? How these core principles, eliminating waste, focusing on value, fostering continuous improvement, might apply almost anywhere, whether it's a factory, an office, or even our own personal lives. It's about cultivating that mindset of ongoing refinement.
A powerful thought to end on. Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive. Until our next exploration, keep learning and keep improving.